It's that time again for another Big Five analysis. In today's video, we'll be looking at Ethereum, Sui, Solana, XRP, and Bitcoin. Maybe not necessarily in that order, but we'll start it off right here with the leading man himself, Ethereum, or maybe it's a leading woman, who the hell knows. But I do want to address that Ethereum, especially in the short term, does have a much different chart than what we see across the rest of the board. Now, whenever I do see something like that, it's typically a signal to tread with caution. But hey, as far as Ethereum goes, it still holds its overall uptrend. We still have higher lows, or Ethereum still has higher lows. And the pattern bros of this world are going to be calling this an ascending triangle, which, theoretically it is, as long as you are especially above that last Sunday low of about 2460 on a daily closing base. Now, you can see the obvious range for Ethereum here with essentially the highs right around that white moving average, which is a 200-tip moving average. And of course, the lows being governed by that yellow 21 EMA. So as long as it is consolidating between there, technically speaking, that does have a bullish bias as long as you have those higher lows, the trend is your friend, I suppose. But I do want to express that, hey, whenever I see, especially Ethereum doing something different than the rest of this market, it's usually a sign that Ethereum is the one that's going to play catch up rather than the rest of the market. But hey, who knows if that actually works out this time? However, that has worked out very often in the past. Anyways, to declare a breakdown for Ethereum here, I would be, again, looking at that last Sunday low of 2465, any sort of daily closures below there, and would be looking for the first sort of washout move to the downside, likely retesting around the May lows, which was about 23 to 2320-ish region overall, somewhere around that green 55 EMA. So, a nice little buffer zone right there. On the other end, of course, Ethereum, still could be looking for further upside. But again, the conditions for confirming continuation are the same as it has been since, early May when it got into this region. And that is, again, a closure above at least that 200 moving average, which is effectively 2,700 as of the moment, or a trade above this past Thursday's high at 2787. If you can see something like that, then I do believe that Ethereum is more or less primed towards another decent move, somewhere between about 3,100 to 3,300, with potential for more as well. But as it stands, I do want to address that. There's a lot of causes for concern here. Again, on the higher term timeframes, especially keeping in mind that we have the monthly closure later tonight, and the daily timeframe is going to see daily momentum continue to the downside here as long as Ethereum's close and daily dildos below 2,600 almost. That is going to be combined with the 2-day timeframe, which is also coming down as well. And this one is going to, or actually no, it just closed last night, but it'll continue down as long as Ethereum's below 2,666. Oh, triple sixes. Holy shit, it's the devil's number. This thing's being sent to fucking hell, isn't it? Anyways, the 3-day time frame also going to be showing downside as long as this thing's below 2,600. Again, fresh closure as of last night. The 5-day time frame is actually going to remain up, probably at least for now, but you can get into the critical zone right here, which is going to make it a little bit easier to turn down perhaps on the next on the next period. But as of right now, that one is pivoted at 2480-ish region. The weekly time frame still upside, which is good. Bi-weekly time frame also still upside, but the one big time frame that has essentially been keeping us safe from Ethereum, not looking for this one to join the rest of the market, which the rest of the market has been making new all-time highs, especially Bitcoin, I suppose, is the monthly stochastic oscillator. We've been looking at this for a very long time, but especially in the past year, since May of 2024, this one has remained down the whole damn way. And how many times on crypto Twitter and crypto YouTube have you heard it's Ethereum season, it's altcoin season, Ethereum's going to be going to the fucking moon and beyond, and yada yada, we're all going to be rich, and you'll get your beautiful coins sent to you. I don't even fucking know. Whatever. Anyways, price action since May 2024 again has certainly not made new highs, but more importantly, it has dragged on to a new downtrend. So ultimately, as long as this still remains to the downside, I would express concern here for the long term. And barring tonight's monthly closure, assuming that it does not close today above 3370, which seems unlikely to get a $800 move, more than an $800 move, I should say, before the end of the day, well, I suspect that this will continue down at least for one more period. And the real question is, where does this next pivot open up when we get tomorrow's June open on Sunday? So if that number comes down significantly, kind of to where it's at right now, okay, I think Ethereum's actually going to have quite a nice summer. And there perhaps is some good reason to believe that as well. We do see this trendline regression governing the last couple macro lows for Ethereum, coming off of the the 2019 lows right here, connected with your December 2022 lows. And I can imagine that the monthly stochastic oscillator for Ethereum will hit this trendline regression probably in June, at the latest July. So, if and when it does get there, I would, I'd still be expecting like at least a little bit of a bounce attempt, and perhaps that could be where things do turn over. But as it stands right now, kind of selling off into the end of the month, not the best signal for a lot of these things, as we'll be looking at across the board. Would definitely like to see Ethereum at least remain above 2363. If it could actually pump above 2564 by end of day, that would look okay as well, reclaiming all the major moving averages here. But again, as long as this monthly is angled to the downside, my sort of take on Ethereum is, treat it with skepticism, treat it with risk, and perhaps better things to be looking at. Although, in the more recent times, Ethereum has been certainly one of the best performers. Anyways, moving on now to SUI. I do want to go down to the daily. Remember, SUI was a first mover with this market. It moved to new major highs alongside Bitcoin early on, or not early on, but in 2024. In this past rally where Bitcoin did make new all-time highs, SUI did not. And looking at SUI, if I'm looking for what I generally think the rest of these top four are going to do, shitcoins, well, I think they're generally going to be doing something like this. Yes, up until about middle of this past week, you did still have this uptrend above the 200 simple. However, on Friday's closure, nice in breaking all of that, even creating actually, this is not a new close-in low below this past week, but overall, short term, like Ethereum, very likely a bounce. And I do think that most of these things will set up for, short-term bounces ultimately. But as long as this one is below that last price action pivot at 374, 375-ish region, I would treat it with, again, skepticism here, because this is a downtrend. So that is to say, again, as long as you're below 375, the trend is your friend to the downside. And while there could very easily be a bounce up towards like 340 or 350 even, that would still be yet another lower high. And that's going to be combined with downside momentum on the daily time frame. Yes, it's getting way down here as of right now. So, it's probably going to, again, have a short-term bounce, I would imagine. But when we get to the other higher term timeframes, I think the picture becomes a little bit more clear. By daily time frame, headed down as long as you're below 389. 3-day time frame also headed down more or less freshly as long as you're below 408. Quite far away right now. 5-day time frame also headed down as long as you're below 409. 10-day time frame is actually up here. And if we go to the monthly, similar to Ethereum, although this one, definitely has a massive lack of history to really be judging, but it is almost freshly down as of the past couple of months and remains with downside momentum as long as you're below 454. And again, that's kind of a rule for me with a lot of these highly esteemed altcoins, that as long as your monthly momentum also is to the downside, it's probably not the thing to be betting on. But, again, this one was one of the best actors for this current cycle. So if anything's going to have a good response, assuming that Bitcoin has a good response, then, this thing should be one of the bigger winners. I forgot to go over the price action pivot for Ethereum here. The daily time, actually, no, I did. It's right there. Yes, there you go. By the way, a lot of people have been asking about the price action pivots recently. We are actually going to be having a sale starting Monday this coming week, and you can even try it for free starting today if you really want, on the Teachable link in the description below. Anyways, yes. Okay, so we got that. We spoke about all of the higher term time frame momentum. Where the next target be to the downside if this thing does further break down? Again, I do think that there's probably going to be a bounce first. Getting back up to like 335, 350-ish region is certainly not like a humongous ask right here, but more longer term, I do think that this thing is playing out one mega massive range at best, and that range would effectively be your highs over here on actually on the price action pivots as well, which is 429. Let's say the middle of your range coming in at about where you're at right now, 320-ish region, and then the bottom side of your range actually coming a little bit further down here, closer to this price action pivot. Let's just call it about $2 or so. So if you do start to fail below here. Again, closing on new lows effectively, I would be looking for this thing to come back down, 240-ish region, maybe even all the way down to those April or closer to those April lows, probably not making new lows. But, if this thing is bullish, I think kind of the general trajectory after a little bit of a short-term bounce is maybe something like this. It trades sideways here and then tries another big upside move. But for right now, after a pretty epic run since the April lows, it's taken a bit of a siesta, I guess. Anyways, yes. Okay. So we spoke about that. Obviously, if this thing does actually reclaim 375, that flips things back in the Bulaw's favors. But again, the trend is your friend here, or well, maybe not. I don't know your positions. Anyways, looking at XRP, very, very similar in a lot of regards for the short term. Can this thing bounce up somewhere around? I mean, shit, this thing could bounce up all the way to like 230-ish region. Doesn't mean anything, as all major moving averages are switching into a full-on bearish posturing with all periods now below the 200 simple, and the daily about to get a silver cross to the downside. So technically not full-on bearish posturing just yet, but this thing's probably going to get another rally. If it fails to really, pop back up above like 235 to 240, I mean, it's just a downtrend. I mean, shit, your last lower high was all the way over here at about just under 250, 248 would be the number right there. So, do be aware of that. You can have a big rally here, just like SUI or Ethereum, but if it does reject there, I mean, that's your confirmation of downtrend, and you have to be looking, or at least I have to be looking for this one, or bias towards this one coming a little bit lower. Anyways, as far as XRP goes, let's go over stochastic momentum here. Very similar reads to SUI actually. Daily time frame remains down, but it's in like a super deep region right here. Wouldn't take too much for this thing to cross up. 213 is the number to beat for today. The buy daily time frame still coming down hard as well. 240 is a pivot. 3-day time frame also coming down hard below 252. 5-day time frame is going to freshly come down on the next closure, which actually isn't happening for another 4.5 days. But that pivot is 217, which is actually living 5 cents below right now. And the monthly is going to be freshly turning down. So again, my rule with these, like my rule for myself, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do. I'm not your dad, but my rule for myself is that as long as the monthly stochastic also is positioned to the downside, that's not like a long position I want to be taking. If you're a more active trader, and that will very likely continue to the downside coming into June open. Now, it's possible this number does shift significantly. It's always possible. But as of right now, the momentum pivot is 273, meaning that as long as you're below there, it's not great. And of course, the next big thing that I really be putting the focus on is that the monthly 5 EMA at 209.85 absolutely must close above for this monthly closure if XRP is going to have hopium, in my opinion. If you do close below there, then this thing is, very likely to break down over the summer, or at least try some downside over the summer. And like I said, as far as, as long as this monthly is positioned to the downside, I would look at this with skepticism, let's say. Yeah, skepticism. So again, short-term bounce, but if it does want to come lower, after a rejection on a bounce, somewhere between 180 to 190 is fair game for this thing. And then of course, there's always a possibility that it has a true breakdown, but similar to, I think it was SUI. Yeah, it was SUI. We got the same sort of range here, right? Here's your range high, your range lows coming in around about here. You just failed the middle of the range, so probably coming closer to the bottom of the range after a bit of a bounce. Anyways, moving on from there, we got Solana, Salami, blah, blah, whatever the fuck. Anyways, this one also kind of in the early stages of a breakdown. It did take out that last price action pivot low from May 19th, now switching into a bearish pivot here, which it's using Friday the 23rd's high of May, that is. And similar to the other ones, it's like, yeah, you can easily get a bounce here, back up to like 162, maybe 167, 170 even, but that's lower highs still. So you got high, you got low, you got lower high, you have lower low here by definition. You see momentum coming to the downside as long as you're below 172 on the daily. The 2-day time frame also coming down hard below 179. 3-day time frame also coming down heavy below 180. 5-day time frame going to have a fresh cross to the downside on this next closure as long as you're below 174.5. Again, that's 4.5 days away. And then the monthly time frame, just like Ethereum, just like XRP, is still showing downside momentum here, which has been incredibly accurate as it effectively turned down right here in January of this year. And that was effectively, the end of new highs for this thing, at least for a while. So again, I would say the same thing here. As long as this thing's positioned to the downside, I don't look at this as like, making new all-time highs and $500 is the next target. No, $1,000 next target, man. Don't you know fucking Solana, they're building something on it that's really important. And that means that people are going to buy because people actually care about the technology, right? Anyways, as far as Solana goes, I would say kind of the same thing as Ethereum. At minimum, as long as you're below that white 200 moving average, you know, it's hard to be calling any sort of real reversal to, I guess in this case, you know, 200 to 220-ish region would be the next obvious targets to me, or probably more like 210 to 220-ish region. So that'd be pretty damn good. But hey, you know, that's a big ask right now. That's like what, $25 away? Yeah, it's about $25 away almost. So fair enough. Good luck. Anyways, let's now look at some of the. Should we look at Bitcoin pairs or Ethereum pairs? Let's look at Bitcoin pairs today. Ethereum, Bitcoin here. Let's see what this one's doing. Still kind of struggling around this region. It's like, but here's the thing. I really do think that this thing will trade higher, you know, at some point, like 3.25 million Satoshis, maybe even 4 million Satoshis. It's like, it's hard for me to see this thing breaking down to new lows from where it's at right now. You know, this is a retest of the prior macro lows, but long term, it's still one mega massive macro downtrend on the monthly. Again, looking at monthly stochastics, it really wouldn't take too much to get this one pop into the upside here. So, you know, I wouldn't be betting on like new lows for this one. Again, on the monthly, when we look at let's go SUI BTC here and see what this one looks like. Similar to the US dollar actually, but less strong, of course. This one obviously, yeah, putting in a nice consolidation around the sort of lower blocks that we've seen throughout this current year. You know, do I think it gets all the way down here? Probably yes. You know, again, higher term timeframes looking at me like they probably want to come down a little bit. Of course, and I'll tell you, this is not helpful information, or, you know, it's just too far away. But look, anywhere below April's low, this thing is very likely going to, if it trades anywhere below April's low, like basically from here on out, I think that this thing is going to have a tremendously nasty move to the downside from there. Let's call it like another 50% move to the downside, or close to that. Very, very ugly. But for right now, you know, still remains with this overall uptrend. So have to respect that. But just be aware, below April's lows, big fucking problems. What else do we have? XRP BTC. Let's see what this one's doing. Oh, what do you know? Another lower high. Crazy on a monthly time frame. This thing doesn't even know how to put in an uptrend. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And what do you know? Not only is this a local and lower high, but the monthly stochastic oscillator is crossing down freshly. I don't have enough decimal places for this thing to put out a readout, although I could do that, but I don't want to fuck around with it right now. You know, again, not looking great here, man. You know, where is the pivot? So as far as the weekly go, it's actually given a range for the price action pivots. You got the top side at 3250. You got the bottom side at February's lows at 1940. So I guess they're still hoping, as long as you're above that 1940 pivot, the second that you start to close weekly deltas below there, which closes tomorrow night, by the way. So there will be a chance perhaps tomorrow, as soon as tomorrow, I'd be looking at this as confirming the next local and lower high, and continuation of trend likely to follow after that, I guess. So yeah, there's that. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, Solana XRP. Solana BTC is what I mean to say. Yeah, I think this one is, well, that's fucking obvious, right? Breaking down, man. Clear and obvious rejection right there, barring any sort of like heroic reclaim of 17,000 Satoshis by literally tonight in 16 hours, 36 minutes, and 10 seconds and counting. I think that this chart's going to do an Ethereum, honestly. You know, there's going to be bounces along the way, but something generally like this, blah, 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 and then maybe it tries another move later. I think that's like best case scenario. Obviously, worst case scenario is just new and more new lows. But yeah, you know, this is like just not good. You know, where would I switch my mind around on this? Because you always need an or at least I always need an invalidation. I guess the last price action pivot at 17,000 Satoshis is where I'd be looking at. Or, you know, if you want to be super by the book, then you got to reclaim that 200 simple, which is all the way closer to like 19 or 20,000 Satoshis. Sorry, about 19 to 19,500 Satoshis. So yeah, it's got a lot of work to do. Again, there will be bounces along the way. We are talking about, you know, very high term timeframes here. So like if you're looking at a fucking 5-minute or an hourly or 4-hour time frame, you're going to see all sorts of twists and turns along the way. But I don't know, man. The trend could very well be your friend here. Anyways, we'll finish it off with Bitcoin. Bitcoin already saw the monthly closure for CME. This is what it closed like. Bitcoin did not close above the top side of the 38.2 level, and definitely did not close above the top side of the 50% level, although it did still remain above the median here. But we'll see where this one opens up on Monday for CME. Of course, we will actually get information sooner than that for spot price action, which is tonight. And I made a quick Twitter post about this, kind of flippant, but Bitcoin tested the median this month on the HPDR for the monthly, and I mean, if it closed like this, that reads as a rejection. So I mean, am I saying that this rally is done and Bitcoin's going to zero? No, you still got uptrends on pretty much every time frame that matters, but I would be expecting a pullback after, again, very likely a short-term bounce attempt. We can go over here to Bitcoin. Bitcoin could easily bounce back up to like 105, even 106.5 region. But again, price action pivot here is now switched into down bias, which actually happened a couple days ago on the break of 106.5, and that is now at nearly $110,750 US. So yeah, probably does try a bounce from here, but any sort of bounce that fails to reclaim this region, well, it's just that, a bounce. Where's the next area of interest to the downside? Probably somewhere right around here. Let's just call it like $100,000, give or take a bit from that number. Again, I think that you probably get a bounce first before anything else. And then if it's going to come down, it comes down there like in early June. And I think the hope here for the BULAs is that, Bitcoin comes down for like the first week or two of June and puts in a low, somewhere in the mid to upper 90s. And if it can do that, I still think that it actually does have a chance. Again, assuming that it really does reverse from there. But, this is in a kind of precarious place. We just saw the 10-day close yesterday alongside the 5-day. And again, that reads as a rejection. Again, Bitcoin can easily afford a pullback here. It is higher lows the whole way through because this was a fucking vertical move since April. So, theoretically come down. It could come down close to there and still remain with the overall uptrend. So, I'm not saying it's going to come all the way down there, but, I would be just aware that, Bitcoin more than likely sets up for a pullback here. Maybe after a very short-term bounce, and then we get the and then hopefully we get confirmation of whether this market is still good to go or not. But as of right now, looking at the monthly time frame, I do want to also look at the monthly stochastic oscillator for Bitcoin. It should be known that CME yesterday did close above its pivot. For tonight, spot price action, the pivot is 102,675. So right now, about $1,000 above. So it probably does maintain above there again. But I really want to see where this one opens up tomorrow for June. So again, that'll be a big topic on tomorrow's video. And I think that's where we'll leave it for today. Market kind of morphing around as it typically does. But despite some maybe short-term bounces, it does look to me like things generally want to pull back a little bit lower. And for the things that I've really not even put in like a real uptrend yet, that could be very disastrous for them. And for the ones that do have uptrends, well, they can afford it, I guess. So fuck it. Anyways, with all of that said, I'd like to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Sunday.